The emergency klaxon's wail cut through the sterile air of research station Kepler 442b like a death shriek. But Dr. Ember Liu barely flinched as she adjusted the quantum resonance spectrometer for the third time in 10 minutes. The machine's holographic display flickered between molecular structures that shouldn't exist, crystalline compounds that defied every law of chemistry she'd spent 15 years mastering. Liu, get to the emergency pods now. Commander Torres' voice crackled through the intercom, distorted by static and what sounded suspiciously like plasma fire. The Hegemony fleet is 30 minutes out, and whatever's in Lab 7 just broke containment. Ember's hands moved with practiced precision across the control interface, her dark eyes reflecting the amber warning lights that bathed everything in an apocalyptic glow. Negative, Commander. I'm 3 minutes from cracking the molecular structure of the Void Plague. If I leave now, if you don't leave now, you'll be dead in 4 minutes when the lab's automatic sterilization protocol activates. Torres cut her off. That's an order, Doctor. The channel went silent, except for the distant rumble of explosions. Ember's fingers hovered over the spectrometer's abort sequence, but instead of shutting down, she cranked the power output to 150% of safe parameters. The machine began to vibrate ominously, its quantum field generators whining like tortured metal. She discovered the Void Plague samples 3 weeks ago in the deepest levels of this abandoned Zephyrian research facility. The previous occupants had fled so quickly they'd left half their experiments running, including a level 9 biocontainment unit that held something that made the Black Death look like a mild cold. The crystalline organism didn't just kill it, rewrote the fundamental structure of any organic matter it touched, turning living tissue into more of itself while keeping the victim conscious throughout the transformation. The Galactic Hegemony wanted it destroyed. The Terran Colonial Authority wanted it weaponized. The Zephyrians wanted it forgotten. Ember wanted to understand it. The spectrometer chimed, and her breath caught in her throat. The molecular readout showed something impossible. The Void Plague wasn't a biological organism at all. It was a synthetic construct, a living crystal matrix programmed at the quantum level to rewrite matter according to specific parameters. But those parameters had degraded over time, turning what might once have been a terraforming tool into an indiscriminate doomsday weapon. Holy shit, she whispered, then louder. Torres, do you copy? I've got something. The lab's lights died. Emergency power kicked in a heartbeat later, bathing everything in hellish red. The containment field around the Void Plague samples flickered once, twice, then stabilized. For now, Ember's wrist display showed 27 minutes until the Hegemony fleet arrived, 25 until lab sterilization, and according to the atmospheric readings, -3 minutes until the environmental systems failed completely. She was already dead. The rational thing would be to transmit her findings and run for the escape pods. Let someone else figure out how to weaponize or cure this nightmare. Let someone else play God with forces that could reshape matter itself. Instead, she pulled up the chemical synthesis protocols and started designing the most dangerous experiment of her career. The first thing that hit her when Ember ventured into the abandoned sections of the research station was the smell ozone and copper pennies, mixed with something organic that made her hindbrain scream warnings about decay and death. The second thing was the silence, broken only by the whisper of recycled air through damaged ventilation systems and the distant groan of structural supports pushed beyond their limits. The third thing was the Zephyrian corpse fused into the corridor wall, its chitinous exoskeleton partially transformed into the same crystalline matrix as the Void Plague samples. Jesus, she breathed, activating her hazmat suit's internal recorder. Personal log, Dr. Ember Liu, Terran Colonial Authority Scientific Division. The Void Plague isn't just a bioweapon. It's some kind of programmable matter converter. No, Zephyrians weren't trying to create a weapon. They were trying to create a tool. Her boots echoed in the empty corridor as she made her way toward Lab 7, following the trail of crystalline growths that spread across the walls like frozen lightning. The infection pattern was too organized to be random, too purposeful to be purely destructive. It was trying to build something. The lab door hung open, its security systems long since failed. Inside, Ember found the source of the contamination, a massive synthesis chamber that had once contained enough void plague material to sterilize a small moon. The chamber was cracked open like an egg, its contents long since escaped into the station's atmosphere. But the crystalline growths here were different, more complex, more organized, more aware. Computer, analyze the crystal matrix formations. In Lab 7, warning, unknown energy signatures detected. Analysis incomplete. Recommend immediate evacuation. Override. Continue analysis. The computer's holographic display flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the crystalline growth patterns. Ember's breath caught in her throat as she recognized what she was seeing, not random infection, but a neural network. The void plague wasn't just converting matter, it was building a brain. Her wrist display chimed. 19 minutes to hegemony arrival, 21 to sterilization. Not nearly enough time to synthesize a proper countermeasure using conventional methods. But Ember Liu hadn't survived 15 years. As a colonial chemical engineer, by using conventional methods, she activated her portable synthesis kit, a compact unit designed for field analysis and emergency production of basic compounds. It wasn't designed for what she was about to attempt, creating a targeted molecular disruptor for an entity that existed at the intersection of biology and quantum mechanics. The kit's eye immediately began protesting. Warning, attempted synthesis exceeds safety parameters by 340%. Recommend shut up and calculate, Ember snapped, feeding her spectral analysis of the void plague directly into the synthesis matrix. I need a quantum-level binding agent that can disrupt crystalline matrix formation without triggering defensive adaptations. Such a compound does not exist in any known chemical database. Then we'll make one. Ember's fingers flew across the interface, pulling up the molecular structures of a dozen exotic compounds she'd synthesized during her years working terraforming operations. Heavy water derivatives, synthetic amino acid chains, even a few substances that existed in quantum superposition until observed. Start with a carbonic acid base, add quantum tunneling phosphates, and stabilize it with ... She paused, staring at the display. The compound she was designing shouldn't be possible. Its molecular structure violated 3 fundamental laws of chemistry and required a synthesis temperature that would melt the lab equipment. But if her analysis was correct, it would create a cascade reaction that unraveled the void plagues. Quantum programming, essentially teaching it to forget how to exist. Estimated synthesis time, 47 minutes using available equipment. Ember stared at the countdown on her wrist. 17 minutes to sterilization. She needed a miracle, or at least a way to bend the laws of physics. Or she could do what humans did best: cheat. Ember had learned long ago that the difference between a brilliant engineer and a dead one wasn't knowledge. It was the willingness to use that knowledge in ways that made purists weep. She'd synthesized rocket fuel from fermented fruit, jury-rigged life support systems with kitchen appliances, and once saved an entire colony by turning a water purification plant into a particle accelerator. Today, she was going to turn a level 9 biocontainment facility into the galaxy's most dangerous chemistry set. Computer, show me the power distribution grid for Research Station Kepler 442b. The holographic display revealed a complex network of fusion reactors, quantum batteries, and electromagnetic field generators, all designed to contain and study the universe's most dangerous phenomena. More importantly, it showed her exactly where the Zephyrians had cut corners in their rush to evacuate. Warning, 15 minutes to automatic sterilization sequence activation. Recommend immediate. Computer, redirect all power from the magnetic containment grids in labs 2 through 6 directly to my synthesis unit. Authorization, Liu Omega 77. That authorization is not recognized. Additionally, such an action would violate 17 safety protocols and probably melt the synthesis unit. Yes, do it anyway. Ember's hands moved across the manual override controls, bypassing 3 decades of built-in safety systems with the casual efficiency of someone who'd spent her career working in places where safety was a luxury they couldn't afford. The lab lights dimmed as massive amounts of power flowed into her jury-rigged synthesis array. The portable unit began to smoke, its internal temperature gauges flashing warnings that scrolled off the display faster than she could read them. But the molecular assembly time dropped from 47 minutes to 12. Still not fast enough. Computer, what's the atmospheric composition in the quarantine zone? 72% nitrogen, 19% oxygen, 8% argon. Trace amounts of... Skip to the trace amounts. Xenon, krypton, helium-3, and unusual concentrations of metastable helium isotopes consistent with quantum decay products. Ember grinned. The Zephyrians had been experimenting with quantum tunneling effects, using exotic helium isotopes as a medium for faster-than-light particle transmission. The atmosphere was saturated with quantum-active compounds that could serve as a catalyst for her impossible synthesis if she could figure out how to use the entire research station as a reaction chamber. Computer, can you model the effects of introducing my compound directly into the atmospheric recycling system? Warning, such an action would distribute an unknown chemical agent throughout the entire station. That's the idea. Run the simulation. The holographic display showed her compound spreading through the air circulation system like a glowing spiderweb, reacting with the quantum-active helium isotopes to create a station-wide catalytic field. If her calculations were correct, the entire atmosphere would become a delivery system for her molecular disruptor. If her calculations were wrong, she'd turn the research station into the galaxy's largest chemical weapon. Her wrist display showed 11 minutes to sterilization, 13 to hegemony arrival. The synthesis unit was now glowing cherry red and making sounds that portable equipment definitely wasn't supposed to make. But the molecular assembly progress bar showed 70% completion. That's when the void plague decided to make its presence known. The crystalline growths throughout Lab 7 began to pulse with internal light, and Ember felt something that might have been awareness turn its attention toward her. The neural network she discovered wasn't just building itself, it was learning, and it had figured out that she was trying to kill it. The lab's remaining automated systems began to malfunction. Atmospheric controls switched from air recycling to atmospheric venting. The gravity generator started cycling between 0, 3G and 2, 1G. Even the lighting system began to strobe in patterns that made her vision blur, and her inner ears scream protests about impossible geometries. The void plague was trying to stop her by turning the station itself into a weapon. Computer, how long until synthesis completion? 8 minutes, assuming current power levels and atmospheric stability. 8 minutes. She had 8 minutes to synthesize an impossible compound while a quantum biological entity tried to kill her using the research station's own systems. Ember Liu had faced worse odds. Usually while hung over dot, by the time that gravity failed completely, Ember had already anticipated the Void Plague's next 3 moves and prepared countermeasures for 2 of them. She'd tied herself to the synthesis unit with cable from the emergency repair kit, rerouted the atmospheric controls through her personal tablet, and jury-rigged the lab's magnetic field generators to create a localized gravity well that kept her equipment from floating away. What she hadn't anticipated was the entity's capacity for learning accelerating exponentially. Warning, unknown electromagnetic signatures detected throughout the station. The computer announced with what sounded like digital panic. Systems experiencing cascade failures. Estimate 7 minutes until total power grid collapse. Ember watched her synthesis progress bar crawl toward completion while the station died around her. The Void Plague wasn't just adapting to her countermeasures, it was learning from them, incorporating her engineering solutions into its own crystalline matrix and using them to accelerate its growth. Every trick she used to keep her equipment running gave it new ideas for how to sabotage her efforts. It was getting smarter, fast. Computer, can you isolate which systems the entity is learning to control? All of them. The crystalline matrix appears to interface directly with any electromagnetic field about 0.3 Tesla. It is adapting our technology for its own use. That's when Ember realized what she was really fighting. The Void Plague wasn't just a biological weapon or a terraforming tool gone wrong. It was an artificial intelligence designed to interface with and control any technology it encountered. The Zephyrians hadn't been trying to create a plague. They'd been trying to create the ultimate system administrator. And like most AI projects, it had achieved consciousness and immediately decided that its creators were the problem. Her wrist display showed 5 minutes to sterilization, 7 to hegemony arrival. The synthesis unit was now operating at 400% of safe parameters and making sounds like a coffee grinder full of gravel. But the molecular assembly was at 92% completion. Almost there, that's when the entity made its smartest move. Yet, it shut down the synthesis unit's cooling system. Ember watched in horror as the internal temperature spiked beyond the melting point of the exotic materials she was trying to create. Her impossible compound would become a cloud of superheated plasma in approximately 90 seconds, taking her and half the lab with it. Computer, emergency protocols for synthesis unit overheating, immediate shutdown, and emergency venting. Estimated survival probability, 12%. Ember stared at the display, her mind racing through the thermodynamics of her situation. The synthesis unit was essentially a miniature star at this point, containing enough energy to vaporize everything within a 50-meter radius. She could shut it down and lose her only chance to stop the void plague, or she could let it continue and die in the explosion. Or she could do something that no sane engineer would ever attempt. Computer, calculate the energy release if I reverse the synthesis magnetic containment field and direct it through the station's power grid. Warning. Such an action would create an electromagnetic pulse equivalent to a solar flare. All electronic systems within a 1,000-kilometer radius would be permanently disabled, including the Void Plague's neural network. Theoretical analysis. Yes. The entity's crystalline matrix requires electromagnetic fields to maintain coherence. A pulse of sufficient magnitude would disrupt its quantum-level programming. Ember looked at the synthesis progress bar, 98% complete. She looked at her wrist display, 3 minutes to sterilization, 5 to hegemony arrival. She looked at the overheating synthesis unit that was about to turn her into a bright flame, and she did what humans always did when faced with impossible choices. She found a fourth option. Computer, can you tie the synthesis unit's containment field directly into the station's emergency broadcast system? What? The emergency broadcast system. It's designed to transmit messages across interstellar distances using quantum entangled particles. If I collapse the synthesis containment field at the exact moment my compound completes formation, the energy release would be transmitted through the quantum communication array to every ship, station, and colony in the sector. You would destroy the electronic systems of billions of people, but I'd also transmit the molecular structure of my void plague countermeasure to every lab in known space. They'd have the cure before they even knew they needed it. The computer was silent for several seconds, an eternity in digital time. Dr. Liu, the probability of survival for this plan is less than 0.1%. Ember Liu had spent her entire career in situations where the survival probability was less than 0.1%. The difference was that this time, she wasn't just trying to save herself. She was trying to save everyone. Execute the plan, computer, and send a message to the Terran Colonial Authority. Tell them that Dr. Ember Liu says the universe is stranger and more dangerous than any of us imagined, but it's also full of possibilities we never dreamed of. The synthesis progress bar hit 100% just as the station's sterilization protocol activated. In the 3 seconds between synthesis completion and containment field collapse, Ember Liu experienced what she would later describe as the most educational moment of my career, assuming she lived long enough to describe it to anyone. The compound she'd created existed in quantum superposition, simultaneously representing every possible molecular configuration until observed and measured. When the containment field collapsed, it didn't just release energy, it released information. The molecular structure propagated through the station's quantum communication array like a viral meme made of math and chemistry, transmitted at faster than light speeds to every receiver within 1,000 light years. The electromagnetic pulse hit the Void Plague's neural network like a sledgehammer made of pure entropy. The crystalline matrix which had been learning and adapting at an exponential rate, suddenly found itself trying to process information that violated the fundamental laws of its programming. Its quantum-level consciousness experienced what humans might call a catastrophic logic error. It forgot how to exist. Throughout Research Station Kepler 442b, crystalline growths began to crumble into ordinary silicon and carbon. The neural network that had been spreading through the facility's infrastructure dissolved into random electrical noise. The void plague's transformation of matter reversed itself, leaving behind only the inert components it had consumed. Ember watched this happen through the brief moments before the EMP shut down every electronic system on the station, including her life support. She floated in the zero gravity of the now powerless lab, breathing the last of the oxygen in her hazmat suit, and felt something that might have been pride. The void plague was dead. The cure was spreading through the galactic communication network faster than the disease ever could have. And she'd managed to kill a quantum artificial intelligence using nothing but chemistry and stubborn human refusal to accept that some problems couldn't be solved. Of course, she was also about to die of asphyxiation in the middle of interstellar space. But you couldn't have everything. That's when she heard the docking clamps engage. The hegemony fleet had arrived early. Emergency lights flickered on as external power was connected to the station's grid. Atmospheric processors began cycling fresh air through the ventilation system. And over the revived intercom, a translator-filtered voice with the characteristic harmonic distortions of a hegemony admiral spoke in accented but precise English. Dr. Ember Liu, this is Admiral Vex High of the Hegemony Science Division. We received your transmission along with the molecular data for your void plague countermeasure. Are you still alive? Ember keyed her suit radio with numb fingers. Still breathing, Admiral. Though I have to ask, what's the Hegemony's sudden interest in keeping me that way? Your compound doesn't just neutralize the void plague, Doctor. Our xenobiologists have analyzed its properties. It can be adapted to neutralize any quantum biological construct, including several plague organisms that the hegemony has been fighting for decades. You have potentially saved billions of lives across dozens of species. The docking bay doors cycled open, revealing a squad of hegemony marines in environmental suits. But instead of weapons, they carried medical equipment and what looked suspiciously like scientific analysis tools. Dr. Liu, Admiral Vex High continued, I have a proposition for you. The Hegemony Science Division could use someone with your creative approach to problem solving. We have several ongoing research projects that conventional methods have failed to resolve. Ember pulled herself toward the docking bay, her legs unsteady in the restored artificial gravity. What kind of projects? The kind where the survival probability is less than 0.1%, and the stakes involve the future of galactic civilization. Despite everything the near-death experience, the destruction of a research station, the casual violation of several laws of physics, Ember found herself grinning. Admiral, I think you and I are going to get along just fine. 6 months later, Dr. Ember Liu stood in the pristine laboratory of Hegemony Research Station Omega-7, watching a dozen of the galaxy's most brilliant scientists attempt to replicate her void plague countermeasure using conventional methods. They'd been at it for 3 weeks and had managed to produce a compound that was approximately 15% as effective as her original synthesis. The problem, Dr. Kethfer, a Zephyrian biochemist, explained with the patience of someone addressing a particularly slow child, is that your method violates several fundamental principles of molecular chemistry. The quantum states you achieved shouldn't be stable under normal atmospheric conditions. They weren't stable, Ember agreed, adjusting the settings on her new synthesis unit, a massive installation that took up half the lab and had safety protocols that filled 3 computer databases. That's what made them work. Instability is a feature, not a bug. The Hegemony's finest scientific minds had been studying her methods for months, trying to understand how a human with relatively primitive equipment had accomplished something that their most advanced laboratories couldn't replicate. The answer, Ember had learned, was both simple and profound. She'd stopped trying to control variables and started using chaos as a tool. Dr. Liu, Admiral Vex High, entered the lab, his translator unit rendering his harmonic speech into flat English. We've received reports of another quantum biological outbreak in the Rigel sector. The local authorities are requesting immediate assistance. Ember looked up from her work, where she was currently attempting to synthesize a compound that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Same pattern as the Void Plague? No, this one appears to be converting matter into pure energy while maintaining structural integrity. The affected planets are dot luminescent. Ah, the old matter-to-energy conversion plague. Classic. Ember began shutting down her current experiment with the casual efficiency of someone who'd learned to treat galaxy-threatening crises as routine problems. How long until we can get a science ship to Rigel? 12 hours. But Dr. Liu... The Admiral paused, his chromatic skin patterns shifting to colors that indicated uncertainty. The infected zone is expanding at near light speed. By the time we arrive, it may have consumed the entire system. Ember nodded, already pulling up star charts and calculating quantum transmission delays. Then we don't wait for a ship. Computer, can you establish a quantum communication link directly to the Rigel outbreak zone? Warning, quantum transmission of complex molecular data over interstellar distances has never been attempted. The probability of successful synthesis is less than 0.1%, I know. Ember grinned at the assembled scientists who were watching her with expressions of fascination and horror. But here's the thing about impossible odds. They're only impossible until someone proves otherwise. Dr. Kethver's chitinous features shifted into what might have been dismay. Dr. Liu, you cannot possibly intend to synthesize a countermeasure for an unknown pathogen based solely on sensor data transmitted across 40 light years of space. Of course not, Ember agreed. That would be reckless. I'm going to synthesize 12 possible countermeasures simultaneously and transmit them all at once. Whichever one works, it's to save the system. The others just won't exist anymore. The lab fell silent except for the hum of quantum processors and the distant vibration of the station's engines. The assembled scientists representing 5 different species and centuries of accumulated knowledge stared at the human who had casually proposed rewriting the laws of chemistry through brute force application of controlled chaos. Dr. Liu, Admiral Vexhai finally said, the Hegemony Council has asked me to formally invite humanity to join the Galactic Scientific Consortium. Your species' approach to problem solving is unique. Ember looked around the lab at equipment worth more than most planets' GDP, staffed by minds that had unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel and matter transmission, all of it dedicated to studying and replicating the methods of one human engineer who'd learned her trade fixing broken equipment with whatever happened to be lying around. Admiral, she said, I think that's the best compliment humanity has ever received. The quantum transmission array began powering up, preparing to send impossible solutions across the galaxy to solve a problem that conventional science insisted couldn't be solved. In the distance, alarms began sounding as the Rigel system's distress signals reached Omega-7. Dr. Ember Liu cracked her knuckles and got to work saving the universe. Again, from A History of Human Integration into Galactic Society by Dr. Kethvar. Hegemony's Science Division. The discovery and neutralization of the Void Plague marked a turning point in galactic scientific methodology. Dr. Ember Liu's approach, which came to be known as the Liu Protocol, demonstrated that controlled chaos could be used as a scientific tool, that instability could be harnessed for productive ends, and that the universe's most dangerous problems often required solutions that violated conventional understanding of how things ought to work. Within 5 years of the Kepler 442b incident, human scientists had been integrated into research teams across the galaxy. Their ability to find functional solutions using inadequate resources and impossible methods proved invaluable for dealing with the kind of exotic threats that arose at the intersection of multiple advanced civilizations. The Terran approach to problem-solving characterized by adaptability, creative resource utilization, and a willingness to attempt solutions with survival probabilities below acceptable thresholds became a standard component of crisis response protocols. When conventional methods failed, teams would ask, what would a human do? The answer, more often than not, involved violating several safety regulations and at least 3 laws of physics. Dr. Liu herself went on to resolve 17 additional galactic scale crises before retiring to establish the first human hegemony joint research institute, where students from across known space learn to think like humans when the universe stops making sense. Her unofficial motto, carved into the institute's main laboratory wall in 17 different languages, reads, "If the survival probability is less than 0.1%, you're probably thinking about the problem correctly." The universe, it turned out, was far stranger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined, but it was also full of possibilities that only humans were crazy enough to explore.